They were heroes. They threw off the shackles of the Portuguese colonizers. With the ANC and ZANU-PF, they fought the apartheid governments in Rhodesia and South Africa. They are one of the great liberation parties of Africa. So, how did it go so wrong for FRELIMO? Why are roads littered with protesters' barricades? Why are government buildings on fire? Why does Mozambique's opposition want to make the country ungovernable? FRELIMO has won every election held in Mozambique. After independence, the country was a one-party state with an ongoing civil war, funded by America and her allies. In the 1990s, the funding dried up as the Cold War ended and Mozambique became a democracy. People had a choice: the FRELIMO freedom fighters or the party supported by the USA, RENAMO. Most Mozambicans favoured FRELIMO, and despite the ever-present accusations of vote rigging, the party won elections with a comfortable majority. But FRELIMO's government has become increasingly unpopular with some Mozambicans. After late independence and a long civil war, the country is still in the early stages of economic development. Many Mozambicans are rural farmers who struggle with the increasing droughts. Projects to build mines and power plants have been delayed because of the insurgency in the north, where Islamist rebels threaten people's lives. Adding to these problems is the issue of corruption. Because the party is so dominant, it acts like it owns government resources. In 2013, the government took over $1 billion in loans from European banks. Officially, the money was to be used for the fishing industry. In reality, it disappeared into multiple private bank accounts, leaving the country massively in debt, and several government officials very rich. When the markets realized what had happened in 2016, the Mozambican currency collapsed. Secret deals were done between the banks and the government to resolve the problems. This means no one knows the full details of who was guilty. Recently, rumours emerged that former president, Filipe Nyusi, was involved. The good news for FRELIMO was that Nyusi was stepping down for this election. They had a strong new candidate, David Chapo, a former radio host and state governor, a fresh-faced 47-year-old. What they didn't count on was a massive change in the opposition. RENAMO has been usurped. A group of smaller parties have emerged, offering a new product to voters. Hopping between these smaller parties was a former engineer, Venancio Mondlane, famous for his criticism of government corruption. Just before the election, he agreed to run as a candidate with Podemos, a small party formed in 2019. In August 2024, the election campaign started. Mondlane and Chapo travelled across the country and even to the diaspora in South Africa. "Save our country," preached Mondlane, promising to sort out the insurgency in the north and end corruption. Interestingly, Chapo said exactly the same thing. "I will lead a government based on combating corruption." When election day came in early October, Chapo and Mondlane watched the results come in. It was Mondlane, the outsider, who spoke first, claiming independent polls carried out by his party showed a 50% victory for him. Then the government results started to come in. Instead, it seemed FRELIMO had won by a 70% landslide. How did the two parties come away with such massively different results? Some people have been intimidated or stopped from voting, but these were a minority of cases. It seemed the big inaccuracies came from thousands of registered voters who didn't exist. In some rural provinces, FRELIMO's heartland, a third of voters were simply ghosts. About 1 million people suddenly appeared on the electoral register to vote, then disappeared. Rumours spread on social media that Zimbabwe's government had bussed voters across the border to vote for FRELIMO as well. Whilst the liberation parties in South Africa and Zimbabwe were happy with the outcome, the international observers from the AU and EU argued the election was flawed. As for Mondlane, he was furious. He had declared himself winner. Now he called for nationwide protests. What started as a political protest movement quickly escalated into a cycle of violence and chaos across the country. Mondlane's allies were shot by unknown gunmen. He fled into exile, whilst his supporters set up roadblocks and clashed with the police and army. Citizens coordinated the bagging of pots and pans, a safe way to show their opposition to the armed soldiers patrolling the streets. Outsiders called for a compromise agreement. Perhaps there could be a power-sharing deal, or at least a commitment to hold the riggers accountable. Mondlane was also criticized by some people. Perhaps it was time to accept. This election was just a flawed step in the right direction. It was time to move on. The problem is, when Mondlane did write some demands for a negotiated deal with FRELIMO, they simply ignored it. FRELIMO doesn't have a long history of negotiation. It wins wars and elections. What is clear is that the age of the unchallenged Liberation Party is coming to an end in Southern Africa. People want politicians to deliver the goods. They want fair elections which represent their wishes. They aren't going to vote out of nostalgia for the past. A new age of politics is dawning. Some countries, like Botswana, have managed to transition peacefully. Others, like Mozambique, greet the dawn with smoke and fire. To learn more about international scholarships for Africans, check out Kupanda Digital Academy. And for more videos like this, like and subscribe to the Africa Review.